You can now support Dr. Rank financially through Patreon and YouTube memberships. More info about that at the end of the video. G'day Earthlings, Dr. Rank here, and welcome back to Gaming Legends, the show that misses none of the shots we don't take. Back in November 2022, I attempted a shotless run of the newest Mario plus Rabbids game, which I recommend watching if you haven't already. What I failed to mention at the time was that the free copy of the game that Ubisoft gave me also included all the DLC. So naturally, I had to ask, can you beat the Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope Season Pass without shooting? Our objective is to complete all 3 DLC campaigns on demanding difficulty without using any weapons. This applies both to the main ZL function of the weapon, as well as any reaction techniques such as Hero Sight and Counterblow. Also, I am fully aware that there are some characters whose weapons aren't technically considered shooting, but the whole point of challenge runs is to experience the game in a whole new way. I decided to ban everything that uses the ZL button, because the run wouldn't be very interesting if I just spammed Edge's sword constantly. With all that out of the way, let's begin the first campaign. Can you beat the Tower of Doom without shooting? The Tower of Doom is a Season Pass exclusive campaign, tasking us with completing 10 battles in a row with no team heals available. We start the campaign with only 4 characters and 4 sparks, and which ones we get are completely random. Thankfully, I got lucky with my starting sparks, receiving Toxicquake, Electrogeddon, and Wildclaw Master, who can summon a Shockwave of Ooze, a Lightning Storm, and an Ally Wildclaw respectively. The only bad spark I got was Aquanox, whose sole purpose is to power up the weapons I won't be using. Before choosing a battle, you can see its objective and the rewards for completing it. I prioritized battles that would give me new characters or new sparks. The first battle I did tasked me with destroying all the Dark Messiahs on the map. While we can dash into enemies to damage them, Dark Messiahs are immune to such tactics. Fortunately, all of our sparks are fully capable of destroying them, the only downside being that they have cooldown periods. Winning that battle gives us Scoper Master, letting us summon our own sniper who's allowed to do whatever the heck he wants. Each battle also gives us skill points which we can use to unlock abilities like extra dashes or Mario's Stomp. Battle number 2 was another Dark Messiah mission that went just as smoothly, awarding us with Rabbid Mario upon completion. Rabbid Mario's Counterblow is banned as it uses his weapon, but his explosive dash is fully allowed. For battle number 3, I chose a standard fight against Deep Freezers. These guys are the biggest hassle in this run, as they have an AoE freeze attack that prevents us from moving. Not exactly ideal in a run where you're trying to dash everything, but every little bit of damage we deal adds up, so we can safely thaw them all out and get the Cryogeddon spark. Battle number 4 was a reach area mission. If I had Lucius on me, this level would be a breeze, but alas, only his Rabbid counterpart is present. Not to say that that's a bad thing. In fact, Rabbid Luigi was the one who actually reached the goal. Battle number 5 only gave us one option, a survival mission featuring a giant Wildclaw. The best strategy for these is to have Peach and Rabbid Luigi on your team to reduce the damage you'll be taking, as well as using summons to divert the enemy's attention. Having a decent healer on your team is also a good idea. Rabbid Luigi sadly didn't live to see the final turn, but luckily Peach's team barrier was there to keep the rest of us alive. Our reward is the ability to equip a second spark to each character, and we coincidentally have exactly 6 useful ones. Battle number 6 tasks us with defeating all 6 Ghostly Walkers, who possess the unique ability to avoid reaction shots. Oh no! The last Walker was surrounded by an entire army of Goombas, but this was the perfect situation to summon a thunderstorm and enjoy the fireworks as each Goomba electrocuted the one behind it. Winning this battle gives us Rabbid Rosalina, who can immobilize enemies with her Ennui ability. This helps immensely in battle number 7, which was a survival mission, especially with the Ennui duration upgrade to make it last longer. There were some enemy portals that appeared while my sparks were all in cooldown, but I was able to destroy them by throwing a couple power blocks. Also, by using Team Barrier and Reflector, I was able to use this Scoper's villain sight against him. Battle number 8 was a simple Flamin' Stooge mission, which awarded us with the Squashette Master Spark. Squashette's attack is extremely short range and has a tendency to cause collateral damage, but her mobility is much greater than Wild Claw. She's also good at taking out the Dark Messiahs in battle number 9, rewarding us with the Master of Dashing, Edge, and the final battle. This battle is always a boss fight against a random giant enemy, in my case a giant Magnafowl. This guy is too big to dash into, so our newly required Edge Lady isn't gonna be much help. My successful attempt had a team of Rabbid Peach with Toxic Wake and Scoper Master, Peach with Electrogeddon and Reflector, and Rabbid Luigi with Wild Claw Master and Cryogeddon. Spend the first couple turns taking out the smaller enemies while leaving your Scoper to camp at the start point. You'll particularly want to aim for the Magicians as they can heal the enemies and undo all your hard work. Giant Magnafowl has a Magnet Dance ability to draw you in, so keep your distance unless you have Peach's Team Barrier and or Rabbid Luigi's Exhaust available. If the former is ready, intentionally get everyone as close together as possible, coaxing him into attacking everyone at once and taking over 1,000 damage from the Team Barrier explosions. It'll take about 15 minutes to whittle his health down all the way, but it is far from impossible. With Spawny running off to the harder expeditions that we don't have time for, the Tower of Doom no-gun run is officially conquered. Now that that's over, it's time for campaign number 2. Can you beat the last Spark Hunter without shooting? The Last Spark Hunter is a midquel to the main story, taking place between Barrendale Mesa and Cursor Stronghold. Rather than actually examining the main story save files, the game just assumes that you are a completionist and gives you all the characters and sparks from the beginning. The characters are already at level 30 and have their skill trees auto-filled, and you're free to redistribute the skill prisms at any time. I recommend emptying out the weapon category for all characters, as well as the technique category for Mario, Luigi, Edge, and Rabbid Mario. Your best damage dealer for most battles will be Bowser, who can make shockwaves when landing from a jump and summon Rabbid Mecha Koopas to chase enemies between turns. There's also a few new enemies in this campaign. Golems will retreat into an egg when their health reaches 0, and will fully revive themselves if not dashed into before the end of the turn. I recommend dealing the killing blow with a shockwave spark like Gargantuan so you can dash them immediately, but if you have no dashes left, it might be wise to hold off until the next turn. The second required battle tasks us with freeing all the Rabbid musicians from their cages. This can only be done by dashing the switches anyway, but this comes with the cost of not being able to dash into as many other enemies. We've also got the new Field Breaker enemies to deal with, who are immune to almost every element and tend to cover the stage in poison goop, making traversal much more dangerous. I highly recommend having Edge on your team for this one, as she can extend her movement range with each dash while using both Peaches to keep her alive longer. Completing this battle unlocks the Vampgeddon Spark, who can siphon health from enemies with its attack, and is the one element to which nothing is immune. We then have our first encounter with Kanya and our first boss fight. Proto-Mecha King Bob-omb has a shield that can only be broken by throwing a Bob-omb at it, which isn't inherently any harder to do. As far as getting a Bob-omb to throw in the first place, you'll want to keep your distance from Proto-Mecha while it spawns them, which can be made easier by repelling it with the Screech Spark. Once the Bob-omb spawn, dash it with whomever is closest and toss it. Once the shield is down, anything other than dashes will deal damage, but Gargantuan and Vampgeddon will be the strongest. The shields won't go back up until the next batch of Bob-ombs spawn, so tanking a hit with Team Barrier and Reflector is still a viable strategy. After some uneventful overworld quests, we have to escort 3 Melospheres back to their nest without letting any of them take 3 hits. The optimum strategy is to drop them behind cover when not actively transporting them, but sometimes that cover gets destroyed, leaving it exposed to 2 Sea Stooges attacks at once while within walking distance of a third. Fortunately, the AI is apparently merciful and won't try to hit the same Melosphere more than twice in the same turn. If the gap between pieces of cover is too far, you can use a Team Barrier as a stopgap. You'll want to split up your party so that each hero covers 1 Melosphere, but once someone has finished their escort, have them reunite with the others to help with crowd control. And if one hero is overwhelmed, the Melosphere's start point is a perfectly safe spot to heal up with mushrooms. Once the third Melosphere is back at the nest, you're home free. All that remains is the final battle against Kanya's finished creation, the Mecha King Bob-omb. In part 1, we're not able to attack it directly, instead needing to use the Bob-ombs to remove the goop covering the buttons so we can proceed to Dory's cage. This part is mostly straightforward, though I don't recommend using Bowser. If he uses his ground pound while holding a Bob-omb, it will explode instantly when he lands, which isn't exactly a good thing. Part 2 gives us more goop-covered buttons to push, this time to disable Mecha King Bob-omb's shield. He has a very strong melee attack this time, so keep your distance unless you have a team barrier. When the final button has been pushed, all remaining Bob-ombs can be spent on blowing up the big guy himself. With Kanya blasting off again, the last Spark Hunter no-gun run is officially conquered. Now it's time for the finale, campaign number 3. Can you beat Rayman in the Phantom Show without shooting? We start the campaign with access to only Rayman at level 1. He has only a single dash, but can use ring hooks to travel across the entire map in seconds. What is it with DLC characters having insane movement options? Rayman's technique is the Plunger Guard, which spawns multiple sentry turrets that automatically shoot at anything that moves within their range. They can even be picked up and thrown. But isn't that technically a reaction shot? I thought those were banned! Fair point, Cedric, but the guards don't use Rayman's blaster. They are an entirely separate weapon, and therefore are not my problem. Unlike other characters, Rayman is unable to equip any sparks, instead using costumes that grant special offensive and defensive abilities. The Vortex costume allows you to pull nearby enemies towards Rayman, dealing damage when they land, while also raising your defense by 30%. Meanwhile, the Rocket costume gives you a remote-controlled explosive and makes you immune to all elemental effects. Each costume also has its own Plunger Guard variant, with Vortex guards making the target bounce, and Rocket guards firing explosive shots. Once out of the tutorial, our party is joined by Rabbid Peach and Rabbid Mario, and we have access to every single spark from both the main story and the last Spark Hunter. We also have 2 new ones. Cryoquake produces a freezing shockwave that can help with keeping enemies in place, while Selfie makes a duplicate of the character they're equipped to. Unfortunately, the duplicate has no sparks or skill tree upgrades, meaning they only get a single dash and whatever technique the original had. Considering that Rabbid Mario's counterblow is illegal, Selfie is only useful on Rabbid Peach, providing an extra chance to heal. After we meet up with the Phantom, we have 3 studios worth of battles to cover, and we can do them in any order. The difficulty of each studio scales with our current levels, so there's no point prioritizing any one studio. The Western set has a required shooting gallery in the overworld, but it's a shooting gallery in name alone. All the targets are hit with Rayman's fist, which is not a weapon he uses in battle, nor does it use the ZL button. The boss fight against Sydney Rabbidwacker is a relatively simple one, since we just need to take out all the scopers. We can hit them from a distance using Rayman's Rocket Ride, or by summoning our own scoper. The Medieval set's main event is a 2-part battle. The first part tasks you with throwing a Bob-omb at the gate. Selfie is a huge help for this level, as they can keep an extra button held down at a time, or just extend the combined movement range of all heroes, letting us ferry the Bob-ombs to the end much more easily. I also recommend not using summons for this battle, as they tend to target Bob-ombs when you don't want them to. The second part is a boss fight against a giant flamin' stooge that can't be dashed. For this one, you'll want to split up your party so that no more than one of them catches fire at a time. Rayman is especially useful here, as he can swing back and forth between the back corners to avoid enemies as they spawn, while also throwing plunger guards at the boss. The hardest set by far was the Pirate set. The first required battle is fairly simple, just tasking us with taking down some Sea Stooges. Nothing Electrogeddon can't deal with. But then there's the boss. The Kraken has dark mess eyes on the back of its head, and hitting them was a nightmare. The nearest landmass is too far away, so Shockwave and Rain Sparks can't reach them, and 2 of them are too high up to be hit with a power block. And while the Scoper summon can technically reach them, getting them to shoot consistently is a Sisyphean task. Rayman's rocket ride can hit them by flying over the water, but we have no control over its altitude. But after a few attempts, it hit me. We have no control over its altitude! If we have Rayman launch his rocket from the highest point in the level and travel straight to the Kraken as the crow flies, we can hit the topmost eye directly and take out the middle one with the explosion. You can only use the rocket every 3 turns, so getting the gold trophy isn't exactly in our budget, but with enough patience we can conquer the Calamari Corneas. With all 3 sets complete, we can take on the final boss, the Phantom. The 4 sparks I recommend having for this battle are Gargantuan, Selfie, Vampgeddon, and Scoper Master. You may have noticed in my footage, however, that Rabbid Mario has Electrogeddon and Glitter. The reason for this is that I'm an idiot. The Phantom can only be damaged after destroying all the spotlights, which is done with dashes anyway. We can't dash the Phantom himself, but he's just barely in reach of all our other attacks. The only thing that won't work is Rayman's plunger guards, as he only moves by teleporting. This can make hiding behind cover much more difficult, as he can just teleport behind you! But I discovered the stupidest possible strategy. These obtuse angled corners in the middle of the stage are the perfect place to hide in, as he can't reach you from any of his positions, but you can still reach him. If we put the Rabbids in both of these corners while keeping Rayman behind the cover at the far back, he'll never teleport. Even the normal enemies will eventually just camp in the one spot without attacking if we leave them alone long enough. Whenever their cooldowns finish, have Rabbid Peach hit him with Gargantuan, Rabbid Mario with the Rain, and Rayman with the Rocket Ride. The geography does change up a bit for Phase 3, but the same basic principle still applies. With the Phantom lowering the final curtain and Rayman returning to the series dormancy from whence he came, the Rayman in the Phantom Show No Gun Run and the Sparks of Hope Season Pass No Gun Run as a whole are officially conquered. If you'd like to watch these runs, you can do so via the links in the description. Also, as mentioned at the start of this video, I've opened up a Patreon account letting you support me financially. There are currently 2 Patreon tiers available, Sapphire for $3 a month and Gold for $5 a month. If you subscribe to the Sapphire tier, you'll get a written credit at the end of my videos and early access to the archive footage of my challenge runs, including live stream archives. For example, I've got a coinless run of Super Mario 3D Land coming up, the footage from which will be unlisted until the main video goes live. If you're a Patreon supporter, you'll get access to that footage right away. The Gold tier is identical, but you'll also get a verbal shout out from me. And if for some reason you don't like Patreon, that's fine, because both of these tiers will also be available as YouTube memberships for the same price. Links to my Patreon will be in the description as well as on the end card. And finally, be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the aforementioned Mario 3D Land video. That's all for now, and I will see you down under.